on to our next game. There's two games this weekend between ranked teams. One is Miami and Texas A&M. The other one is BYU at Oregon. Mm-hmm. And BYU has flat dominated Power 5 teams the last 2 years. I mean, like their success against Power 5 teams the last 2 years is really impressive. They beat Baylor in overtime last week. And I believe they went 5-1 last year against Power 5, 6-1 against Power 5 teams. So they are 7-2 or 7-1 against Power 5 teams the last 2 years. They've beaten Arizona, Utah, Arizona State. They lost to Baylor last year, got redemption on that, beat Washington State at Washington State, beat Virginia, and then beat USC last year at USC. BYU comes into this game as the favorite, and Oregon is still the team in everyone's perception that got destroyed by Georgia. Yep. Now, nobody's talking about what they did to Eastern Washington this past week, and I know why. It's an FCS school. That's a really good FCS school. That is an FCS school that went 10-3 last year and made it to the national playoffs. Beating them 70-14 is not something to sniff at. It's not like Miami beating Bethune-Cookman by the same score. Bethune-Cookman's not good. Eastern Washington is good. So I think they bounced back. Now we need to find out if they can bounce back against somebody that's as big and as bad as they are that can pop them in the mouth. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're going to find out this week, because I was actually surprised how Oregon bounced back from that game. I was. I thought they were going to come out and just be like Notre Dame was against Marshall. And this is the thing. I give them a lot of credit. Dan Lanning, I'll give him a lot of credit, because you got embarrassed on national TV in week 1, and your team came out ready to play the next week. And I know the competition wasn't good, but again, we're talking about a playoff team at the FCS level, a team that won the championship a few years ago. Different coach, I get that. But this is a good FCS program, and you annihilated them. That tells me a little something about this team, but not enough for me to confidently say, oh, yes, they're definitely going to beat BYU. I did, however, predict them to win this game. I do have Oregon winning this game. I think that BYU's they're a little banged up on the perimeter. I'm not a big fan of Baylor, honestly, offensively. And I think that was a real good, gritty win, Ryan. But I just think Oregon is going to be able to hurt BYU from a speed standpoint. I saw some things offensively last week from Oregon that I liked. If they can build on those things, I think this team is gonna win this game. And going to Oregon and beating them a week after an overtime win against Baylor is tough sledding. And if they can do it, and all of a sudden BYU becomes a legitimate playoff conversation team moving forward. Legitimate, because then they'll also have Notre Dame coming up in a few weeks. So that's my thoughts on this game, Ryan. What say you?
Not so fast, my friends. BYU is a more physical team than Oregon, and I'm not picking Bo Nix. It's all it comes down to, man. Not picking Bo Nix.
Besides your hatred for Bo Nix, what other things do you like about this match? In all seriousness, what other things do you like about this matchup?
I think that BYU.
I just want to kind of dive into the analysis of it.
I think for me, Oregon defensively, on the defensive line specifically, Brandon Dorius is a pretty good defensive lineman. He's undersized, though, right? They're undersized. DJ Johnson is a decent pass rusher, not much of a run stopper. I think BYU has a clear advantage in the trenches in this game. They have guys like Blake Freeland, Clark Barrington at offensive guard. I think he's also
two of their linemen on our all-opponent team for Notre Dame this year.
Yep. They also have an Oregon transfer at right tackle. Apparently, that's a pretty good football player as well. So I think BYU has the clear advantage in the trenches, at least offensively versus defensively.
Agreed.
I wasn't a big fan of what I saw from Oregon's offensive line the 2 weeks ago. I know it was against Georgia, but I don't know. They just looked a tick slow. They didn't look overly physical. So I think BYU is just a more physical football team, and I trust their quarterback more. I think Jaron Hall is a very dependable player. Good athlete. I wouldn't say that he's like this dynamic player, though, right? Like, he's got some dual threat to him. He's a pretty good decision maker.
He reminds me of, he does for BYU what Sam Ehlinger did for Texas. He was not a dynamic athlete. He was not a 4-4 guy. He just was a baller.
Good player.
He could just make plays. And Jaron Hall reminds me a lot of Sam Ehlinger in that regard.
That's interesting.
He just makes plays. Because he's not Lamar Jackson. He's not Malik Cunningham. He's not that kind of athlete, a quarterback, but yet he makes a lot of plays.
That's not a bad one at all. Because I also just like Jared Hall. I don't know if he's an NFL kid. I don't know if he'll stick there, but like he's just a really good college quarterback, man. Like he's gonna keep you in the game, and I think that you're a more physical team than Oregon. So at the end of the day, you're more physical, and I'm gonna trust your quarterback a little more. So I'm gonna opt for that. And then Dan Lanning has something to prove, and I think BYU has a good coaching staff. Though they've had some familiarity, consistency over the last couple of years. So. Give me the consistency of BYU. I picked 34-28, but the more I talk about it, Brian, I think the game might be even more lopsided than I think it could be. Like, I think BYU has a chance to run away with this one a little bit.
Sean Davis has a BYU 34-23. You went 34-26. Andrew McDonough went 31-16 in favor of BYU. And so I'm the only person that picked Oregon. So you guys are going to all have a chance to gain on me this week, or I'm going to get some separation.
You're a big Bo Nix guy, so I'm not surprised.
It's not even about that.
It's
not about that. I don't hate him like you hate him, and I acknowledge that there are times when Bo looks like trash, and there's times Bo looks really good. Sure. And we'll find out which version of Bo Nix we're going to get this weekend. It really just comes down to, I don't disagree with anything that you said about the trenches. I think Romney and for the life of me, cannot remember the name of the other receiver that was out last week. Neither of them are going to be 100% this week, although I do expect both of them to play.
Nakua or something, yeah.
I expect both of them to play. He is one of the more dynamic route runners in college football, by the way. I don't know if they're going to be 100% this week. I think that's going to hurt them. I think that they're not real dynamic speed-wise. I do think that they'll score. My score was 34-31. I do think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I just think that Oregon's speed on the perimeter is really where I'm going with this one. And so, yes, they are better in the trenches, but it's at Oregon. So that, I mean, the home field advantage does matter. And I do think that Oregon – I liked how Oregon responded to that embarrassment from the opener. Again, I know it was an FCS school, but they could have walked through it. And Eastern Washington's a good football team. I mean, they are for that level. They're a good football team for that level. Should they beat Oregon? No, they shouldn't beat Oregon. Should it be a close game? No, it should have been a close game. Should it have been 70-14? No. Right? That tells me Oregon did something. And I liked the balance, honestly, in game 2. I did not like the balance in game 1. I'm not a huge Kenny Dillingham fan, to be completely honest with you, as an offensive coordinator, but I do think they come and get this one done. I do. I think this is what Oregon's going to be all year. There's going to be games you're like, yep, Oregon turned the corner, they're back, and then the next week they lose to like Arizona at home. You know what I mean? Like that's how they're going to be this year, in my opinion. I really think that. Think that.
Did you see for BYU last week they had a kid that caught 9 catches for over 100-something yards? Last name Roberts. Great last name. Great last name.
Yeah. There you go.
Tremendous. Only good athletes have that last name.
So Ryan has BYU winning 34-26. You could see it being. So you're saying if you're off score-wise, it's because you think BYU wins by even more.
Yes.
I have BYU winning 34-31.